Hey, Bayek. It's me, Ian. And, well, today's video is Frankenstein Created Woman from 1967. Yes, we're here again, another Hammer film. And, this Hammer film is interesting because it was filmed in 1966, released 1967. So you can call it that sort of mid-Hammer period. And it sees further development in the Frankenstein story. In fact, in many ways, this is a very interesting film in terms of that though Frankenstein is like obviously the sort of star Peter Cushing as usual of the film, he is actually not quite as much centered in the story. The story is very much driven by what is going on with the characters around him. And that makes it interesting as well. There's a lot more expansion in ideas and looking at the whole mythos of Frankenstein. Anyhow, this was directed by the ever reliable Terence Fisher. I mean, what a director he was for Hammer. And this film also, let's see, it was 86 minutes long, though in the American release, it was also 92 minutes long. There was some added scenes to the cut that were shown. It was also a double bill with the 1967 film The Mummy's Shroud. Also, these were the last two stories filmed at Bray Studios before they moved. So that's another sort of end of a certain era in that sense. But what we have here is really Hammer, I suppose you could say, it's gothic height in the way it's confident producing the films, but we haven't got into that new era yet, so there's not the same amount of gore. I mean, some of what is seen in the killings is, it's considered fairly shocking at the time, but standard of that sort of, but it's not really that strong. Nudity, eroticism is more implied. It's not very explicit. So, as I say, it's that sort of period, 1967. So, Hammer is just very confident. It's an efficient running production company, producing these films at a wonderful rate on limited budget resources. It was well organized. And as you can see, from this film, there's certain location shots which were filmed very nearby. The studio settings. In fact, the great thing about Hammer is they reused often their sets. So they would film in a particular set, then put it away, and then bring it out again for their next film. And with a bit of creative photography, they were able to, use that. And that, again, they always look so good. Hammer was so good at doing this, you just never feel that it's a real low budget cheapness to it, and it's not at all. It always looks great, This film stars, I say, Peter Cushing, and the main actress is Susan Denberg. She's a sort of German, Austrian model actress in this role, and she plays Susan, who's a disfigured, sort of crippled kind of woman. And the film, in fact, really centers on her. And I suppose you can see it in the title as well. So that, again, is an interesting point. The monster is very much moved on from. There's Boris Karloff and then Christopher Lee's interpretation of the monster is totally forgotten about, and quite rightly so. We've moved on. And so, as the Frankenstein, I mean, there's still a lot of the Frankenstein characteristics that Peter Cushing knows so well. He's very driven by what he does. In fact, he's so driven that he tends to be really quite selfish and doesn't think much about others. It's all a matter about the work. This soul is really this story is really Peter Cushing now becoming more metaphysical. And when I say that, he's trying to capture the soul and put it into a new body, basically. When the soul, he wants to know that he can keep the soul and that it doesn't go off somewhere else or die. He's trying to prove that the soul carries on living after the body is dead. So his aim is to transfer that soul into another new body. That is the sort of premises of his work, his obsession. And he's working with Dr. What's his name? Dr. Let me see here. Dr. Hertz. That's it. Dr. Hertz. Sorry about that. Yeah, Dr. Hertz. Anyhow, this is played by Thorley Waters, who is a seasoned British actor who's appeared in sort of loads and loads of things. Well, he's assisted by him. This Dr. Hertz is the sort of village doctor, and the locals trust him, but they're not very pleased that the Baron Frankenstein is there working with him. He's still this figure that they don't particularly want hanging around their village, but they've got him, and there's all the stories and what have you. So that's what we've got, those two characters and their work and experiments. But the story does centre around, say, Christina and Hans. Hans is, a lover, really. And he is very protective of her, obviously, because she's disfigured, and basically he feels he's got to protect her, and that's what his job is. Now, the film starts where he's witnessing, yes, it's another guillotine. Yes, we see, as we've seen, like in the Revenge of Frankenstein, the guillotine is there. And the guillotine does pop up a few times in this film. And then it goes, and he sees, the boy sees his father and the boy's hands being executed. And so we have that sort of image throughout the film about the guillotine. And ultimately, he ends up being guillotined himself. And the story then, basically, what has happened is that there's three sort of rich kind of young men drinking, and abusing Christine. really. Christina is abused, and they end up murdering the landlord of the inn where they're drinking. Well, it's Inn Cafe, it looks like an Inn Cafe, anyway. And basically, Hans ends up getting accused of the murder, and so he's going to get excused, and he does. And Christina is obviously, she's totally distraught by all this and ends up killing herself. So the story becomes that his soul that they capture is ultimately put into Christine's body, and Christine, they change into this beautiful woman who's totally now deformed, no longer deformed, and she is a beautiful woman, but Hans is controlling actions and the revenge he gets. I mean, I'm giving away too much of the story. Sorry, I won't go on that. But that's how the story starts and one develops, and we get this. That's what I mean. Though we've got Frankenstein doing all this stuff, and the laboratory is great again. They're good at doing these laboratories. Perhaps it doesn't look quite as big as some of the other things, but it looks great. I love him tinkering around in a laboratory. But as I say, the other part of the story is driving the film forward through Frankenstein. It's not totally centered on Frankenstein. We get in this wonderful story, and I think it really adds to that. It adds just not centering as much on Frankenstein is a good thing, actually. And Peter Cushing is just great. He dominates as usual, whatever he does, and plays it beautifully. And what I also love about this film is actually the way it ends. It almost ends abruptly, and you sort of, oh, yeah. The films did end abruptly. And there's kind of this melancholy sadness you feel at the end of the film. And it's not as often centered on the Baron, which is interesting. That sadness is part of how you've followed the story and seen the conclusion. And I think that makes it interesting. It's not what you normally expect in a Frankenstein film. That again adds to the greatness of the film. I think it's got sort of in terms of appreciation, this film, it's 62% on Rotten Tomatoes. So there were people who like it. Nobody's really been bad with it and saying, oh, it's an awful film. Well, I mean, there always going to be critics of that. Nobody's going over the top. It's sort of, you call it a mid-level kind of entry into the sort of Frankenstein set of films, which is I think, fair enough. But I think it's very interesting. It's enjoyable as well. I say it's more. There's a lot more going on here than you may initially see, And I think it's beautifully done as well. It's so well filmed. Everything about it is really good. And, if you haven't seen this, I think, you really enjoy it. It's such a good film, this. And it fits nicely into the entry and, as you say, the development of the Frankenstein films. Just a quick word about this edition. As I said, look at this. This is a great cover, isn't it? It's a slip cover. This is from the Shout Factory 2019 new transfer. It's from a 2K transfer, and it's great. It's got some nice I'll just show you there it is. Absolutely wonderful. I just love this, and they've got this on the back there. There is a reversible cover as well, which people have been complaining. The reversible cover is sort of the original artwork, but I love this so much. I do really think that's a great piece of artwork. And also, there's some very interesting interviews. There's the interviews with some of the actors are very revealing about the text, about, how the whole story really gives you more ideas about when they were filming it. And there's also an interesting interview with the clapperboard man who gives an insight into some of the sort of the way it was so well organized, and you get an insight into what such a well-run machine Hammer was. And also how the Udians played a big part. It was great because the Udians looked after their people and made it a very efficient... There was certain rules with times, and that was it. And they stuck to those schedules. It worked really well. And he's looking back fondly as he's talking about it. And there's also a wonderful feature on the glamour of Hammer, and it interviews some of the female actresses, such as Caroline Munro, Madeline Smith, etc. And it's really good, excellent. Yeah, Madeline Smith's interesting as well. The way she talks about how she saw herself and said, "I'm not doing this and that," and that's really interesting. So I'd say this is a good addition. The only problem is I looked on Amazon, and here in the UK, the only edition available was a Spanish one for £20, just under £20. There is this available, but it's £30, and it's an import, obviously, from America. And also, you must remember, it's also region A. So if you haven't got a multi-player, then you're not going to be able to play it. So a good advice: get this in, a multi-region player. Yes, always good to have. But this is a great addition. It's a great transfer. It looks great. But I think that's it. That's all I've got to say. Really, it just, I think you would enjoy this film and appreciate it a lot. It really is a good film. But they're all good, aren't they? As I always praising them. But I say, it's just a good film. You'll enjoy it. They'll enjoy it. So, well, all I'm going to say is, as usual, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so we can notify you about what's going on. Then, of course, well, if you like it, give it a like, please. Yeah, please like it. And then it helps us, and it costs note. So please do that. And then all I've got to say is, I'll see thee, and I'll see thee again.